Barcelona, a city that thrums with life, where history breathes through every corner and where the sunlight has a way of painting the ancient stone buildings in golden hues. The warmth of the Mediterranean air fills the streets, mingling with the scent of freshly baked bread from the cafes, the earthy aroma of old cobblestones, and the salty hint of the sea just beyond the horizon. For Mia, Barcelona felt like a dream on the verge of collapsing. She had arrived in the city with the hopes of starting a new chapter, leaving behind a life she no longer wanted in the Philippines. Every day since landing on foreign soil, however, had been a struggle to find herself, to survive, and to make sense of the decisions that had brought her here. Her footsteps echoed as she walked through the narrow alleyways of the Gothic Quarter, a maze of ancient streets that twisted and turned like a labyrinth. Mia clutched her bag tightly against her chest, her breath slightly uneven. She was exhausted. It had been another day of job hunting, another day of hearing the same polite rejections. Her eyes, usually bright and filled with determination, were dull with fatigue. The city she had once dreamed of was starting to feel oppressive, like it was swallowing her whole. But Mia wasn't the type to give up easily. She had faced difficulties before, and she was determined to keep going. After all, she had no choice. She had left her family back home, promising them that she would make something of herself in Spain. There was no turning back now, not when she had so much riding on her shoulders. She adjusted her scarf as the late afternoon breeze brushed against her skin, offering little comfort. The streets were busy. Tourists snapped photos, couples strolled hand in hand, and children played by the fountains, their laughter echoing against the ancient walls. Mia envied them, those people who seemed to belong here, who moved through the city as if it were a part of them. She, on the other hand, felt like an outsider. Her struggles felt hidden beneath the surface of her interactions with the world. Every job application, every interview, every interaction seemed like a test she was failing. The weight of her failure sat heavily on her chest, and as the days went on, the city seemed to grow larger, more intimidating. Barcelona, a city she had once dreamed of exploring, was turning into a reminder of all her broken dreams. Yet, despite all this, there was still a spark in her, a tiny flame that refused to die. A part of her still believed that she could make it, that if she pushed just a little harder, something would change. Today had been another long, fruitless day, but tomorrow, she told herself, would be different. She didn't notice the man walking toward her as she absent-mindedly scrolled through her phone, trying to distract herself from her thoughts. In a moment of pure chance, she collided with him. Papers scattered, fluttering to the ground like fallen leaves. Mia let out a gasp, immediately bending down to pick them up. "Oh my God! I'm so sorry," she blurted, her voice breathless with embarrassment. The man she had bumped into, Ely, looked down at her with a frown, his dark brows furrowing. He didn't say anything at first, merely crouched down to gather the scattered papers. Mia could feel her cheeks burning with humiliation. She had been clumsy, distracted, and now she had interrupted someone else's day. "I should have watched where I was going," she mumbled as she handed him the papers she had collected. Ely straightened up, taking the papers from her hand, his expression unreadable. He was tall, his presence commanding despite his casual appearance. There was something about him, something heavy, as if he carried a burden that weighed him down, even in the way he stood. His gaze, dark and intense, swept over her for a brief moment before he spoke. "Yeah," he said, his voice cool, "you should have." Mia blinked, taken aback by the bluntness of his words. There was no warmth in his tone, no reassurance that it was fine, no polite smile to ease the tension of the moment. Instead, his words were like a wall, cold and hard, designed to keep her at a distance. Her mouth opened slightly, an apology lingering on her lips, but something in his demeanor made her close it again. He didn't linger. Without another word, Ely turned and walked away, leaving Mia standing there, feeling small and insignificant. For a moment, she watched him disappear into the crowd, the back of his figure blending into the flow of pedestrians until he was gone. The encounter left her rattled, though she couldn't quite understand why. It wasn't just his rudeness. There had been something else, something unspoken in the way he had looked at her, as if he was seeing her but also seeing through her, as though she were transparent, inconsequential. The brief interaction gnawed at her, making her feel more out of place than ever. "Great," Mia muttered under her breath as she resumed walking, her mood sinking lower. "Just what I needed today." As she continued her way through the streets, the encounter with Ely replayed in her mind. There had been something familiar about his eyes, something that resonated with her in a way she couldn't explain. Perhaps it was the sadness she had glimpsed there, a fleeting shadow behind his harsh words. She didn't know who he was, but part of her wondered what had happened in his life to make him so cold. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Ely was also grappling with his own demons. Barcelona had always been his escape, a place where he had come to start fresh, to distance himself from the pain that had consumed him after Celine's death. Celine had been the love of his life, and losing her had shattered him in ways he couldn't even begin to describe. Every corner of this city reminded him of her. They had once walked these same streets together, hand in hand, planning their future. Now, those memories were like open wounds that never healed, festering beneath the surface. Ely had tried to move on, but Barcelona was full of ghosts. Every day was a battle to keep his grief from overwhelming him. He immersed himself in work, burying his feelings deep inside, but it was never enough. The weight of Celine's absence hung over him like a dark cloud. He couldn't forget her. He didn't want to forget her. So when he had bumped into Mia, a stranger who had disrupted his otherwise controlled day, his irritation had flared. He hadn't meant to be so cold, but he had no patience left for strangers, no energy to offer kindness. He barely had enough to keep himself going. Ely walked through the streets, his mind far away. He couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how far he went, he would never be able to escape Celine's memory. And yet, even as he thought this, something about the girl from earlier lingered in his thoughts. He couldn't explain it. There had been a spark in her eyes, a defiance, a determination that had momentarily caught his attention. But then again, it didn't matter. He didn't have the capacity for anything or anyone new in his life. Not when he was still so firmly tied to the past. As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow over the city, Mia found herself by the harbor, sitting alone on a bench overlooking the water. She watched the boat sway gently with the tide, the horizon tinged with the golden hues of twilight. Barcelona was beautiful, undeniably so. But beauty, Mia realized, couldn't fill the emptiness inside her. It couldn't quiet the doubts that whispered in her mind, telling her that she wasn't good enough, that she wouldn't make it here, that maybe she had made a mistake in coming. But even as the doubts grew louder, Mia clenched her fists, her determination burning brighter. She had come to Barcelona for a reason, and she wouldn't give up that easily. Tomorrow would be a new day, a new chance to find her place. And as for the mysterious stranger with the sad eyes and cold demeanor, Mia pushed the thought of him away. He was just another fleeting face in a city full of strangers. He didn't matter. Or at least, that's what she told herself. Little did she know that their paths were destined to cross again. In this vast, sprawling city, they would find themselves drawn together, their fates intertwined by more than just a chance encounter. Mia stood in front of a small bakery in Barcelona, gazing at the fresh loaves of bread displayed behind the window. The inviting aroma of baked goods filled the air, making her stomach grumble, but she resisted the urge to go inside. Her budget was tight, barely enough to cover her rent and meals for the rest of the week. Every euro counted, and as much as she craved a simple croissant, she couldn't afford to indulge in anything that wasn't strictly necessary. It had been weeks since she'd arrived in Barcelona, and every day felt like a new test of her endurance. The city had welcomed her with its beauty, the golden light of the sun that seemed to kiss every surface, the breathtaking architecture that turned each street into a work of art, and the lively energy of the people who moved through the city as if they were part of a grand symphony. But beneath that beauty was a harsh reality that Mia had come to know all too well. The truth was, living in a foreign city wasn't as romantic or easy as she had imagined. The excitement that had filled her when she first arrived had been replaced by exhaustion and frustration. Job hunting had been brutal. She had walked through countless streets, entering cafe after cafe, restaurant after restaurant, asking if they were hiring. Each time, she was met with the same polite smile, followed by a gentle, "Lo siento, no estamos contratando." "Sorry, we're not hiring." Her heart sank a little more with each rejection, and the weight of her circumstances pressed down on her shoulders. She felt the distance between herself and her family back home in the Philippines more acutely than ever. They had placed their hopes in her, sending her off to Spain with encouragement and high expectations, believing that she would make something of herself, that she would succeed where others had failed. Mia had carried their hopes with her, but now she felt like she was on the brink of letting them down. The pressure was immense. Every day was a reminder that time was running out. Her savings were dwindling, and the thought of having to return home empty-handed gnawed at her, filling her with dread. She had promised herself and her family that she wouldn't come back until she had achieved something, until she had built a new life for herself here. But as the days passed, that dream seemed to drift further and further away. Mia let out a long sigh as she turned away from the bakery and resumed walking down the narrow cobblestone street. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the buildings, giving the city an almost ethereal glow. Tourists strolled leisurely, stopping to take photos, their laughter and chatter filling the air. Mia envied their carefree demeanor. For them, Barcelona was a place of adventure and relaxation. For her, it was a battlefield. She rounded a corner and found herself in a familiar plaza, where a group of street musicians played lively Spanish guitar music. The melody was joyful, full of passion, but it did little to lift Mia's spirits. She had seen them perform here many times before, and though the music was beautiful, today it felt like a stark contrast to her own mood. As she walked past the musicians, she couldn't help but feel a sense of disconnect. She was surrounded by people, but she felt utterly alone. It wasn't just the physical distance between her and her family that weighed on her. It was the emotional isolation, the sense that she was in a foreign land with no real support system. She had made a few acquaintances here and there, but none of them were close enough to confide in. She missed the comfort of her home, the warmth of her mother's hugs, the laughter of her friends. But more than anything, Mia missed the feeling of being sure of herself. Back home, she had always been the girl who had it all together, the one who knew what she wanted and how to get it. She had been confident, ambitious, and full of dreams. Here in Barcelona, though, she felt like a shadow of her former self. Each setback chipped away at her confidence, and each failure made her question whether she had made the right choice in coming here. Lost in her thoughts, Mia barely noticed the figure approaching her from the opposite direction until they were right in front of her. It wasn't until she collided with him, again, that she realized who it was. Ely. Mia's heart skipped a beat as she recognized him. The man she had bumped into the other day, the one with the cold eyes and the even colder demeanor. She had tried to push the memory of their brief interaction out of her mind, but now, here he was, standing right in front of her, his expression as unreadable as ever. For a moment, neither of them said anything. They just stood there, staring at each other, the tension between them palpable. Mia felt a flicker of annoyance. Of all the people she could have run into today, it had to be him, the one person who had made her feel even more out of place than she already did. Ely was the first to speak. "We really need to stop meeting like this," he said dryly, his voice laced with sarcasm. Mia bristled at his tone. "I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. She didn't owe him an explanation, but she couldn't help feeling defensive. She was tired, frustrated, and the last thing she needed was another icy encounter with this stranger. Ely raised an eyebrow, his expression softening slightly. "It's fine," he said after a moment, his tone less harsh than before. "It's a busy city. These things happen." Mia wasn't sure if that was an apology or just an acknowledgement of the obvious, but she nodded nonetheless, eager to move on from the awkwardness of the situation. She started to step around him, but Ely spoke again, stopping her in her tracks. "Are you new here?" he asked, his voice curious now. Mia hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Part of her didn't want to engage with him any further, but another part of her was surprised by his sudden interest. After all, their last encounter had been anything but friendly. "Yeah," she finally admitted, glancing up at him. "I've been here for a few weeks." Ely nodded, as if that explained everything. "It can be a tough city to navigate when you first arrive," he said, his voice more thoughtful now. "Especially if you're on your own." Mia's defenses softened slightly at his words. He wasn't wrong. Barcelona was a beautiful city, but it was also overwhelming, especially for someone like her who was trying to start over from scratch. She didn't know why, but there was something in Ely's tone that made her feel like he understood what she was going through. "Maybe he did. I guess so," she said quietly. "It's been harder than I expected." There was a brief silence between them as Ely studied her, his expression unreadable once again. Then, to Mia's surprise, he offered a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You'll figure it out," he said simply. It was such a small gesture, such a simple statement, but for some reason, it struck a chord in Mia. She had been so used to hearing platitudes and empty reassurances from people who didn't really know what she was going through. But there was something about the way Ely said it, so matter-of-factly, without any sugarcoating, that made her believe, if only for a moment, that maybe she would be okay. Before she could respond, Ely glanced at his watch. "I have to go," he said, his tone abruptly shifting back to its usual coolness. "But good luck, Mia." Mia blinked in surprise. She hadn't even realized he knew her name. "How do you?" she began to ask, but before she could finish, Ely had already turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd just as quickly as he had appeared. Mia stood there for a moment, watching him go, a strange mixture of emotions swirling inside her. She felt confused, intrigued, and oddly comforted by their brief interaction. Ely was an enigma, a man who seemed cold and distant one moment, and unexpectedly kind the next. She didn't know what to make of him, but one thing was clear. There was more to him than met the eye. Meanwhile, Ely walked briskly through the streets, his mind racing. He hadn't meant to run into Mia again, and he certainly hadn't meant to talk to her. But something about her, about the way she looked so lost and alone, had struck a chord in him. She reminded him of himself when he had first arrived in Barcelona, weighed down by grief and uncertainty, trying to find his footing in a city that felt both beautiful and unforgiving. Ely's mind drifted back to Celine, as it often did. She had been his anchor, his reason for coming to Barcelona in the first place. They had dreamed of starting a new life here together, building a future in this vibrant city. But all of those dreams had died with her. Now, every street, every plaza, every cafe reminded him of what he had lost. He had tried to move on, but it was impossible. The memory of Celine was everywhere, haunting him like a shadow he couldn't escape. Even now, as he walked through the streets, he could almost see her, her laughter echoing in the air, her hands slipping into his as they strolled through the city together. But it was all an illusion. Celine was gone, and no matter how hard Ely tried to forget, the pain of her absence lingered. Mia had stirred something in him, a flicker of empathy, perhaps, or maybe just a reminder that he wasn't the only one struggling. But whatever it was, Ely couldn't afford to get involved. He had his own demons to deal with, his own wounds to heal. Mia was just another person passing through his life, another face in the crowd. And yet, as he walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that their paths would cross again. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled the air as Mia stood at the edge of the beach, watching the sea stretch out endlessly before her. The sun was setting, painting the sky with hues of pink, orange, and gold, casting a warm glow over the city of Barcelona. It was a scene straight out of a postcard, the kind of beauty that should have made her heart swell with happiness. But today, Mia couldn't shake the heavy weight pressing down on her chest. She had spent most of the day walking through the city, wandering aimlessly through the narrow streets and wide plazas, trying to clear her head. Job hunting had been as fruitless as ever. Every rejection stung a little more than the last, and the fear of failure was becoming harder to ignore. Her savings were almost gone, and she still hadn't found steady work. Each day that passed felt like a countdown to an inevitable end, her dreams of building a life in Barcelona slipping through her fingers, €1 at a time. Mia sighed as she sat down on the sand, hugging her knees to her chest. The beach was relatively quiet, with only a few other people scattered along the shoreline, enjoying the cool breeze of the early evening. The peacefulness of the place contrasted sharply with the turmoil inside her, making her feel even more isolated. She had always believed that hard work and perseverance would be enough to overcome any challenge, but now she wasn't so sure. A small part of her wondered if she had made the wrong choice by coming here. Maybe her family was right. Maybe she should have stayed in the Philippines, where things were more familiar, where she had a support system, where she wouldn't have to struggle so much. But the thought of going back, of facing her family and admitting that she had failed, was too painful to bear. She couldn't return home empty-handed. She couldn't give up. Not yet. As Mia sat there, lost in her thoughts, a shadow fell across her. She looked up, startled, and saw Ely standing a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "You again," Mia said softly, her voice carrying a hint of surprise. Ely turned his head toward her, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I could say the same thing about you," he replied, his tone light, but not unkind. Mia didn't know why, but she found herself smiling back. There was something oddly comforting about seeing him again, even though their previous encounters had been brief and at times awkward. Maybe it was because, in a city full of strangers, Ely was one of the few familiar faces she had encountered more than once. Without waiting for an invitation, Ely sat down beside her on the sand, leaving a respectful distance between them. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. They just sat there in silence, watching the waves roll in and out, the rhythmic sound of the ocean filling the space between them. It was Ely who finally broke the silence. "What brings you here?" he asked, his voice low and contemplative. Mia hesitated, unsure of how much she wanted to reveal. She had never been the type to open up easily, especially to someone she barely knew. But there was something about Ely, something in the quiet way he asked the question, that made her feel like he wasn't just making idle conversation. He genuinely wanted to know. "I don't know," Mia admitted after a moment, her gaze still fixed on the sea. "I guess I just needed some space to think." Ely nodded, as if he understood. "Barcelona has a way of making you think," he said softly. "It's a beautiful city, but it doesn't make things easy." Mia glanced at him, surprised by the unexpected vulnerability in his words. She had always seen Ely as distant, closed off, like he was carrying the weight of something he didn't want anyone to see. But now, for the first time, she glimpsed a crack in that armor, a hint of the person beneath the cool, detached exterior. "It really doesn't," Mia agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. They fell into silence again, but this time, it didn't feel awkward. It felt natural, like they were two people who didn't need to fill the space with meaningless words. Mia was surprised by how comfortable she felt sitting next to Ely, even though they had barely spoken to each other before now. There was a strange connection between them, something unspoken but undeniable. After a while, Ely spoke again, his tone more thoughtful this time. "Do you ever feel like you're chasing something that's just out of reach?" Mia's heart skipped a beat at the question. It was as if he had voiced the exact feeling that had been haunting her since she arrived in Barcelona. The sense that no matter how hard she worked, no matter how much effort she put in, the life she was trying to build always seemed just beyond her grasp. "All the time," Mia admitted, her voice barely audible. "I thought coming here would be different. I thought I could start over and make something of myself. But now, I feel like I'm just running in circles, getting nowhere." Ely was quiet for a moment, as if considering her words. Then, he turned to face her, his dark eyes searching hers. "It's not easy to start over," he said softly, "especially when the past is still weighing you down." Mia's breath caught in her throat at the weight of his words. There it was again, that glimpse of something deeper, something raw and painful hidden behind his stoic facade. She didn't know what Ely's story was, but she could sense that he was carrying his own burdens, just like she was. "You seem like someone who knows a lot about the past," Mia said quietly, her eyes meeting his. Ely's gaze flickered, and for a moment, Mia thought she had overstepped, that she had touched on something too personal. But then, to her surprise, he gave a small, rueful smile. "You could say that," he replied, his voice tinged with a sadness that made Mia's heart ache. "The past has a way of sticking with you, no matter how much you try to leave it behind." Mia didn't press him for more. She knew all too well how hard it could be to talk about the things that hurt the most. Instead, she simply nodded, letting him know that she understood, even if she didn't know the details. For a while, they sat in silence again, the sound of the waves and the fading light of the sunset creating a sense of calm between them. Mia found herself relaxing in Ely's presence, the tension in her shoulders slowly easing as the heaviness of her thoughts began to lift, if only for a little while. Eventually, Ely broke the silence once more. "You know, you don't have to do it all on your own," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "There are people here who can help. It's not easy, but you don't have to go through it alone." Mia glanced at him, her heart swelling with gratitude at his words. She had been so focused on trying to prove herself, on trying to make it on her own, that she had forgotten that it was okay to ask for help, to rely on others when things got tough. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. "I needed to hear that." Ely nodded, a small, knowing smile on his lips. "You're stronger than you think, Mia," he said, his gaze lingering on hers for a moment longer before he stood up, brushing the sand off his pants. "Don't forget that." Mia watched him as he started to walk away, feeling a strange sense of loss as the distance between them grew. She didn't know why, but she found herself wishing he would stay, that they could sit together just a little while longer. There was something about Ely, something enigmatic and guarded, that drew her in, making her want to understand him, to know more about the man behind the walls he had built around himself. Before Ely disappeared from view, Mia called out to him, surprising even herself with the suddenness of it. "Ely!" He turned around, raising an eyebrow in question. "Thank you," Mia said again, her voice firmer this time. For everything." Ely gave her one last, fleeting smile. "Take care, Mia," he said simply, before turning and walking away. Mia watched him go, her heart full of emotions she couldn't quite name. She had come to the beach feeling lost and alone, but now, after her conversation with Ely, she felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to remind her that she wasn't as alone as she had thought. Maybe, just maybe, she could find her way after all. As the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon, Mia stood up and brushed the sand off her clothes. The city lights were starting to twinkle in the distance, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a small sense of peace. She had a long way to go, but she wasn't giving up yet. Meanwhile, Ely walked through the streets of Barcelona, his thoughts consumed by memories of Celine. The past was always there, lurking just beneath the surface, no matter how hard he tried to bury it. Meeting Mia had stirred something inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. She reminded him of himself when he had first arrived in the city, full of hope and determination, only to be crushed by the weight of reality. But Mia was different. There was a resilience in her, a strength that Ely hadn't possessed back then. And as much as he tried to distance himself from her, he couldn't help but admire her for it. For the first time in a long while, Ely wondered if it was possible to heal from the past. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for both of them to find their way forward together. But only time would tell. Mia stared at the small window of her tiny apartment, watching the soft drizzle of rain mist over the city of Barcelona. The morning sky was shrouded in gray clouds, a blanket of gloom that mirrored the storm brewing inside her. She had woken up early, the familiar heaviness in her chest weighing her down before she even got out of bed. Barcelona, once a city filled with promise and dreams, now felt like a maze she was hopelessly lost in. Every day was the same, a new job rejection, another failed attempt at proving she could make it here. The city that had seemed so full of life, so vibrant and full of possibilities, now felt like it was slowly suffocating her. But today, something else lingered beneath the surface, tugging at her thoughts. Ely. His words from the previous evening at the beach kept echoing in her mind, looping over and over again. "You don't have to do it all on your own." There had been a strange comfort in those words, a reminder that maybe she didn't have to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. Ely, the man who seemed so distant and closed off, had somehow understood what she was going through, and he had extended a lifeline. The connection they had felt, even in silence, was undeniable, and Mia couldn't shake the thought of him from her mind. Sighing, she turned away from the window and walked to her small kitchen, the worn wooden floorboards creaking beneath her feet. The apartment was sparsely furnished, just a small table, a couple of mismatched chairs, and a bed that sagged in the middle. It wasn't much, but it was all she could afford. Still, as much as she tried to make this place feel like home, there was a hollowness to it. Like her life here, it felt incomplete. Her phone buzzed on the countertop, and Mia's heart leaped at the sight of the screen lighting up. For a split second, she thought it might be Ely, but when she picked it up, she saw it was just an email, a job rejection. Again, she closed her eyes, swallowing the bitter taste of disappointment. She had lost count of how many rejection emails she had received since she moved to Barcelona. They all blurred together into one long, painful reminder of her struggles. Her dream of starting over, of proving to herself and to her family that she could build a life here, was slipping further out of reach with each passing day. Tossing her phone back on the counter, Mia forced herself to focus. She couldn't let this get to her. Not again. She had to keep going, keep pushing, no matter how hard it got. She had made it this far, and there was no turning back now. But as the days stretched on, the familiar routine of job applications and aimless wandering through the city started to wear on her. She found herself drifting back to the beach in her mind, replaying the conversation she had with Ely. Something about him had shifted that night. He had been kinder, more open, as if the walls he had so carefully built around himself had momentarily crumbled. She had seen a glimpse of the man behind the stoic facade, and it had stirred something in her, a curiosity, a need to understand him. Before she knew it, Mia found herself back at the beach, the place where their paths had crossed once again. The waves crashed gently against the shore, the sound soothing her frayed nerves as she walked along the edge of the water, her bare feet sinking into the wet sand. She had come here without even thinking, as if some invisible force had drawn her back. As she walked, her thoughts wandered to Ely. What was it about him that intrigued her so much? Was it the way he carried himself, with a quiet strength and an air of mystery? Or was it the way he seemed to understand her, without her having to say much at all? She didn't know, but she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. There was something about Ely that made her want to know more, to peel back the layers and see what lay beneath the surface. Lost in thought, Mia didn't notice the figure approaching her from behind until she heard his voice. Back here again? She turned around, startled, and saw Ely standing a few feet away, a small smile on his lips. He looked different today, more relaxed, less guarded. His dark hair was tousled by the wind, and his usual sharp, distant expression was softened by the gentle light of the afternoon sun. "I could say the same to you," Mia replied, her tone teasing as she smiled back. Ely chuckled, a sound that surprised her. She hadn't expected him to have such an easy laugh, but it was a pleasant surprise. They fell in a step beside each other, walking along the shore as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the sand. The conversation between them was light at first, a mix of casual banter and comfortable silence. But as the minutes passed, Mia felt that familiar tension rise, the unspoken questions lingering between them. It was Mia who finally broke the silence. "Ely," she began hesitantly, glancing at him from the corner of her eye. "Why do you come here? To this beach, I mean." Ely was quiet for a moment, his gaze fixed on the horizon. When he spoke, his voice was softer, more introspective. "I guess it reminds me of someone," he said slowly, as if the words were difficult to admit. Mia's heart skipped a beat. She had sensed there was someone in his past, someone who had left a deep mark on him, but she hadn't expected him to open up so easily. "Someone important?" Mia asked gently, not wanting to push too hard, but unable to suppress her curiosity. Ely nodded, his eyes still focused on the horizon, as if he was seeing something, or someone, that wasn't there. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Someone very important." Mia waited, sensing that there was more he wanted to say but was struggling to find the words. She didn't want to pry, but at the same time, she felt a strange need to understand Ely, to know what had shaped the man standing beside her. It was a long time ago, Ely continued, his voice tinged with sadness. But some things, some people, they never really leave you. Mia's heart ached for him, for the pain that was so clearly still lingering beneath the surface. She knew what it was like to carry the weight of the past, to be haunted by memories that refused to fade. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. Ely hesitated for a long moment before finally turning to face her. His dark eyes met hers, and for the first time, Mia saw the raw vulnerability in them. It was a glimpse into the man he had been hiding from the world, the man who had been hurt so deeply that he had built walls to protect himself. "It's complicated," Ely said at last, his voice hoarse. "I don't know if I can." Mia nodded, her gaze never leaving his. "That's okay," she said gently. "You don't have to. But if you ever want to, I'm here." Ely's eyes softened at her words, and for a moment, Mia thought he might actually take her up on her offer. But then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the vulnerability in his eyes vanished, replaced by the familiar guarded expression he always wore. "Thanks, Mia," Ely said quietly, his voice full of emotion despite his attempt to hide it. They walked in silence for a while longer, the conversation between them fading into the background as they both became lost in their own thoughts. But despite the quiet, there was a new understanding between them, a deeper connection that neither of them could ignore. Mia couldn't explain it, but being with Ely made her feel less alone. It was as if they were both carrying the weight of their pasts, and somehow, in each other's presence, that burden felt a little lighter. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Mia glanced at Ely and saw a small, almost imperceptible smile on his lips. It was a rare sight, one that made her heart skip a beat. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like to start over?" Mia asked suddenly, her voice soft as she watched the sun dip below the horizon. Ely glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Sometimes," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Mia turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. "Do you think it's possible?" she asked, her voice full of hope and uncertainty. Ely was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting back to the horizon. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost as if he was speaking more to himself than to her. "I don't know," he said quietly. Maybe with the right person." Mia's breath caught in her throat at his words, her heart racing as she processed what he had just said. There was something in Ely's tone, something in the way he looked at her, that made her believe he wasn't just talking about starting over in general. He was talking about her, about them. Before she could say anything, Ely turned to face her, his dark eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that took her breath away. "Mia," he said softly, his voice full of emotion. But before he could finish, the sound of a phone ringing cut through the air, shattering the moment. Ely's expression shifted, the vulnerability in his eyes vanishing as he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Mia watched as Ely's face transformed in an instant, his expression hardening as he answered the call. The warmth and openness they had just shared felt like a fragile bubble, suddenly threatened by the intrusion of the outside world. She could almost feel the distance growing between them, a familiar ache settling in her chest as he stepped back into the guarded persona he had worn for so long. "Yeah." Ely's voice was clipped, and Mia couldn't help but notice the way his body tensed. It was as if the phone call was pulling him back into a reality he had been trying to escape, one filled with complications and unspoken burdens. Mia took a step back, giving him space as she pretended to focus on the waves crashing against the shore, each one carrying a piece of her resolve further out to sea. She felt a mix of anxiety and longing, wishing she could reach out and draw him back in. It was frustrating to see how easily he slipped back into his armor, how quickly the walls he had built re-emerged. "Okay, I'll be there," Ely said, his tone brooking no argument. There was a finality in his voice that sent a chill down Mia's spine. She could sense that whatever was happening on the other end of the line was urgent, possibly even serious. When he hung up, Ely turned to her, his expression carefully neutral. "I have to go." Mia nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "Is everything okay?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The worry etched on his face sent 1,000 questions racing through her mind. Was it about his past? His family? Something from the life he had been trying to escape? Ely hesitated for a moment, his gaze flickering with indecision before he finally spoke. I need to handle something." There was a weight to his words that made her heart sink. It was clear that this wasn't just a casual errand. Something deeper was at stake. Mia's instinct urged her to pry, to dig deeper and ask the questions that lingered on her tongue. But she could see the lines of tension in Ely's jaw, the way his eyes darted away as if afraid to reveal too much. "Okay," Mia said, forcing a smile despite the ache in her chest. "Just take care of yourself, all right?" Ely nodded, but the flicker of gratitude in his eyes was quickly replaced by the familiar wall he always erected. "I will," he replied, his voice distant, almost hollow. As he turned to leave, Mia felt a pang of desperation. "Ely, wait," she called out, her voice breaking slightly. He paused, glancing back at her, and for a moment, she thought she saw a hint of hesitation in his eyes. "Please, don't shut me out," she implored, her heart racing as she stepped closer. "I'm here for you, no matter what it is." Ely's expression softened for a brief moment, but then the mask fell back into place. "I just need some time, Mia. I'll be back later," he said, his voice firm yet tinged with something unrecognizable. Without another word, he turned and walked away, the distance between them stretching like an unbridgeable chasm. As Mia stood on the beach, watching him disappear into the fading light, she felt a mixture of frustration and helplessness. The connection they had begun to forge felt fragile, like sand slipping through her fingers. She wanted to reach out, to pull him back into the warmth they had shared, but the shadows of his past loomed large, casting a pall over their budding relationship. With a heavy heart, she turned back toward the waves. The oceans roared, drowning out her thoughts as she fought against the swell of emotions threatening to consume her. She had come to Barcelona to start anew, to shed the weight of her past, but it seemed the universe had different plans. Maybe this city was a reflection of her own struggles, a beautiful facade hiding the chaos beneath the surface. Hours passed, the sun sinking lower and lower in the sky until darkness enveloped the beach. The vibrant colors of sunset gave way to an inky blackness, and the once lively sounds of the shore were now muted, the air thick with an unsettling silence. Mia wandered aimlessly, her mind consumed by thoughts of Ely and the fleeting moments they had shared. She could still feel the warmth of his gaze, the softness of his voice, but it was all overshadowed by his sudden departure. She found herself in a small cafe near the beach, the dim lights casting a warm glow over the rustic wooden tables. The smell of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, a welcome distraction from the turmoil within her. Mia settled into a corner booth, hoping to find solace in a cup of coffee while she waited for Ely to return. But as she sipped her drink, her thoughts kept drifting back to him. What was he dealing with? Who was the person on the other end of that phone call? She felt a nagging sensation in her gut, a sense of urgency to be there for him, to help him navigate whatever storm he was facing. But how could she do that if he wouldn't let her in? Mia's mind spiraled into a vortex of doubts and insecurities, each thought weighing heavier than the last. She had fought so hard to rebuild her life, to overcome the ghosts of her past, but Ely was different. He was a puzzle she couldn't quite piece together, and the more she tried, the more elusive he became. After what felt like hours, Mia checked her phone for the time. Ely had promised he would be back, but as the minutes dragged on, her anxiety deepened. The cafe slowly emptied, the clatter of dishes and the hushed conversations fading into the background as the staff began to clean up for the night. Mia's heart sank at the thought of leaving without hearing from him. Just as she was about to give in to her worries and leave, her phone buzzed again. Her heart raced as she saw Ely's name on the screen. Quickly, she answered the call, her voice laced with relief. "Ely, are you okay?" "Mia," he said, his voice low and strained. I need your help." The words sent a rush of adrenaline through her veins, her heart pounding wildly. "What's going on? Where are you?" she asked, urgency flooding her voice. "I'm at the old apartment," he replied, a note of panic creeping into his tone. "I didn't want to drag you into this, but I don't know what else to do." The mention of the old apartment sent a jolt of concern through Mia. It was a place she could sense held memories that Ely had not fully shared with her, a place tied to the life he had tried to escape. "I'll be right there," Mia promised, her mind racing with 1,000 questions. "Just stay there and don't go anywhere." As she hung up, a mixture of determination and trepidation washed over her. She hurried out of the cafe and into the night, the cool air biting at her skin as she made her way to the old apartment. Each step felt heavy with anticipation, her heart pounding in rhythm with her thoughts. What had happened? What was so important that Ely needed her? The streets of Barcelona, usually alive with energy, felt eerily quiet as she navigated her way through the winding alleys. The vibrant colors of the city, the laughter of people spilling out from nearby bars, all faded into the background as her focus sharpened on Ely. He needed her, and she would do whatever it took to be there for him. When she finally reached the old apartment building, a sense of foreboding settled in her stomach. The structure loomed before her, its faded paint and cracked walls a stark reminder of Ely's past. Taking a deep breath, she pushed through the front door and climbed the worn staircase to the second floor. That as she approached the door to Ely's apartment, she could hear muffled voices from inside. Her heart raced, and she felt an overwhelming urge to burst through the door, to confront whatever was happening on the other side. But she hesitated, her hand hovering above the doorknob as doubt crept in. Mia could hear Ely's voice, tense and strained, and another voice she didn't recognize, a sharp, accusatory tone that sent chills down her spine. "Ely, you can't just walk away from this," the voice shouted. "You think this is going to solve anything? You're running away again." Mia's heart sank at the words. Whoever was inside was digging into Ely's wounds, reopening scars he had tried to bury. She wanted to rush in and defend him, to stand by his side, but the fear of what she would find held her back. Gathering her courage, she knocked on the door. The sound echoed in the silence, a beacon of support in the face of turmoil. Moments later, Ely opened the door, his expression shifting from surprise to relief as he saw her. "Mia," he exclaimed, stepping aside to let her in. The moment she crossed the threshold, she was hit with a wave of tension, the atmosphere thick with unresolved conflict. The room was dimly lit, and her eyes immediately fell on the man sitting on the worn couch, tall and broad-shouldered, with a sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes. There was an air of authority about him that made her instinctively wary. "Mia, this is Marcus," Ely said, his voice steady but strained. He's my brother." The revelation struck Mia like a bolt of lightning, her heart racing as she processed the information. Marcus? Ely had a brother? Why hadn't he mentioned him before? "Ely," Marcus said, rising to his feet, his gaze locking onto Mia with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "We need to talk about this. You can't keep running away." Ely's jaw clenched as he glanced at Mia, the flicker of vulnerability returning. "This isn't your place, Marcus. I can handle this on my own." "Clearly, you can't," Marcus shot back, frustration etched on his face. "You've been avoiding me for months, and now you think you can just ignore everything and live happily ever after with her?" He gestured toward Mia, his voice dripping with disdain. The words stung, and Mia felt her heart sink. She wasn't here to disrupt Ely's life. She wanted to be a part of it. But in that moment, she could see how deep the wounds ran between the two brothers. It was a battle that had been fought long before she arrived, and she was merely a pawn caught in the crossfire. "I'm not ignoring anything," Ely replied, his voice rising. "I'm trying to move on, to build a life away from all of this." "Move on?" Marcus echoed, his voice laced with sarcasm. "You think pretending it didn't happen will make it go away? You're just burying your head in the sand." Mia's heart raced as the tension escalated, each word exchanged like daggers being thrown back and forth. She wanted to intervene, to calm the storm brewing between them, but the energy in the room felt explosive. "Enough!" Mia finally interjected, stepping forward, her voice steady but firm. "Ely, you don't have to face this alone. I'm here for you, and I want to help." Ely's gaze met hers, a flicker of appreciation shining through the chaos surrounding them. But Marcus's eyes narrowed, and he turned to Mia, skepticism etched on his features. "Do you even know what you're getting into?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. Mia stood her ground, refusing to let fear dictate her actions. "I know Ely is hurting, and I want to support him. Whatever happened in the past doesn't have to dictate his future." Marcus scoffed, crossing his arms over his chest. "And what do you think you can do? You think your presence will magically fix everything?" "I'm not saying that," she replied, her heart racing. "But I believe Ely deserves a chance to heal, to find happiness. Isn't that what family is supposed to do?" Ely looked between them, his expression conflicted. "Marcus, this isn't just about us anymore. I care about Mia, and I want her to be a part of my life," he said, his voice steady. A silence hung in the air, heavy with unspoken words and raw emotions. Mia could feel the tension between the brothers crackling like electricity, and she knew that the conversation was far from over. "Then you need to confront the truth," Marcus said, his voice softened slightly. "You can't keep running away from your problems, Ely. You need to face what happened, not just for yourself, but for her too." Ely looked down, a storm of emotions flickering across his face. The vulnerability he had shown her earlier felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the weight of his past. Mia reached out, placing a hand on his arm, grounding him in that moment. "Whatever it is, I'll be right here," she said softly, her heart aching for him. "We can face it together." With a deep breath, Ely finally nodded, the fight slowly draining from his posture. "Okay," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it's not going to be easy." Mia offered him a reassuring smile, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and determination. They had crossed a threshold, and though uncertainty loomed ahead, she was willing to fight for him, to help him piece together the fragments of his life. As they settled into a fragile truce, the room felt a little less heavy, and Mia could sense the beginnings of healing taking root. Together, they would face whatever shadows lay ahead, and in that moment, she understood that love was not just about the joyful moments. It was about weathering the storms together, standing side by side in the face of uncertainty. And as the night deepened, Mia knew they were only just beginning to uncover the layers of Ely's past. But with each step forward, they were forging a path together, and the uncharted territories of their hearts were slowly beginning to intertwine. The days following Ely's revelation felt both heavy and exhilarating. Mia sensed the burden he carried, and the commitment they had made to face his past together loomed large over them. Barcelona, with its vibrant streets and sun-drenched plazas, became a backdrop for a journey that was as beautiful as it was tumultuous. The city that had offered her a fresh start now witnessed the unraveling of Ely's secrets, and she was determined to stand by his side. Ely had agreed to meet with Marcus again, and they decided to hold the conversation in a cafe near the beach, a neutral ground where the salty air could soothe their frayed nerves. Mia felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation as she walked alongside Ely, her heart racing with every step. She could sense the tension radiating from him, an invisible barrier that had built up since their first encounter with Marcus. "Are you sure about this?" Mia asked, glancing up at Ely, whose expression was a mix of determination and fear. They had talked about Marcus's role in Ely's life, about how their shared history was a source of both pain and hope. But now, as they neared the cafe, she could see doubt flickering in his eyes. "I need to do this," Ely replied, his voice steady but laced with uncertainty. "I can't keep running away from my past. It's time to confront it." Mia nodded, her heart swelling with admiration for him. It was easy to get lost in the chaos of emotions swirling between them, but Ely's resolve shone through like a beacon of light. "I'm right here," she reassured him, squeezing his hand gently. "No matter what happens, we'll face it together." As they entered the cafe, the atmosphere was alive with laughter and chatter. the clinking of glasses and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. Mia scanned the room, her eyes landing on Marcus, who was already seated at a corner table, his posture relaxed yet his gaze sharp. "Hey," Ely greeted his brother, sliding into the seat across from him, while Mia settled down beside Ely, her presence a silent show of support. Marcus regarded Mia with a flicker of curiosity before turning back to Ely, his expression turning serious. "You're late," he stated, his tone neutral but firm. "Traffic," Ely replied, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his voice. Mia sensed the tension building as Marcus leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "We need to talk about everything, Ely. I don't want to beat around the bush." Ely inhaled deeply, nodding as he braced himself for the conversation. "All right. What do you want to know? Why did you leave? Why did you cut me off?" Marcus pressed, his voice rising slightly with emotion. "I thought we were a team. You can't just pretend nothing happened." Mia's heart raced at the intensity of the exchange. She could see the flicker of hurt in Ely's eyes, and she felt the urge to intervene. But she held back, wanting to give him the space to articulate his feelings. "I didn't want to burden you," Ely finally replied, his voice quieter. "I thought it would be easier for both of us if I just disappeared." "Easier?" Marcus repeated incredulously. "You think disappearing is easier? You think I didn't notice? You think I didn't care?" The vulnerability in Ely's eyes deepened, and Mia instinctively reached out, placing her hand over his. "Ely, you're not alone anymore," she reminded him softly, hoping to ground him in this moment of turmoil. Marcus's gaze shifted to Mia, his expression softening just slightly. "And who are you?" he asked, his voice curious but cautious. "I'm Mia," she replied, meeting his gaze with confidence. "I'm here for Ely, and I want to help him through this." Marcus regarded her with scrutiny, searching for sincerity in her eyes. "You really think you can help him? You have no idea what he's gone through." "I may not know everything, but I care about him," she said, her voice steady. "I believe he deserves to find happiness and peace, even if it's hard." Marcus leaned back in his chair, contemplating her words. "It's not that simple," he said, the weight of his concerns heavy in the air. "Ely has always run from his problems. I'm just afraid he'll do it again, and this time it'll be worse." Ely's expression hardened, and Mia could see the tension rising within him. "I'm not running, Marcus. I'm trying to confront my past. I want to face everything that happened." "Then let's talk about it," Marcus said, his voice steadying. "Let's talk about our parents and what happened after they died. Let's talk about the responsibility you left behind." Mia felt the air grow heavier, a palpable tension hanging between the brothers as the memories of their shared past loomed over them like dark clouds. Ely's gaze dropped to the table, and Mia squeezed his hand tighter, willing him to stay present in this moment. "I had to leave," Ely said finally, his voice trembling slightly. "I couldn't handle the grief, the guilt. I felt like I failed them." Marcus's expression softened, and he sighed deeply. "You didn't fail anyone, Ely. We were kids trying to navigate a tragedy that no one prepared us for. But running away from it won't change what happened. We have to face it together, like we always used to. I thought you'd be better off without me," Ely admitted, his voice cracking as he looked up, tears brimming in his eyes. "I thought you could build a life without the weight of my mistakes." "That's not how family works," Marcus said, a mix of frustration and understanding in his voice. "You don't get to make that decision for me. You're my brother, Ely. We need each other." Mia watched as Ely's mask began to crack, the vulnerability that had been buried deep within him surfacing at last. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I thought if I stayed away, it would be easier for you. I thought I was protecting you. And I thought I was protecting you by letting you go," Marcus replied, his voice softening. "But look at us now. We're both lost, and that's not how it should be." In that moment, the air felt lighter, the tension easing as both brothers confronted their shared pain. Mia sensed the shift, the unspoken understanding blossoming between them. They were no longer just brothers caught in the web of grief. They were two men striving to heal and find their way back to each other. As the conversation continued, Mia sat quietly, allowing the brothers to navigate their emotions. She could see the cracks in Ely's facade deepening, the way he was beginning to let go of the shame that had kept him isolated for so long. She felt a surge of hope, knowing that even amidst the darkness, there was a glimmer of light, a chance for healing. Hours passed in the cafe, and with each shared memory, each confession of guilt and regret, the bond between Ely and Marcus began to mend. The laughter that had once been lost in the shadows of their past started to seep through the cracks, illuminating their hearts with warmth. Mia smiled softly as she watched them, her heart swelling with admiration for Ely's bravery. It wasn't just about confronting his past. It was about reclaiming his future, about embracing the love that had been waiting for him all along. Finally, the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the cafe as the brothers shared their final thoughts. Ely's shoulders felt lighter, and the shadows of his past no longer felt insurmountable. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said to Marcus, his voice filled with sincerity. Marcus smiled, a warmth spreading across his face. "I'll always be here, Ely. We'll figure this out together, like we always have." Mia felt a tear slide down her cheek as she witnessed the moment of reconciliation. It was a beautiful sight. Two brothers, flawed yet determined, standing together against the backdrop of their shared history. As they left the cafe, Ely turned to Mia, his expression brimming with gratitude. "I couldn't have done this without you," he admitted, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "You've given me strength when I needed it the most." Mia melted into his embrace, feeling the warmth radiate from him. "We're in this together," she whispered against his shoulder, knowing that their journey was far from over. Together, they walked through the vibrant streets of Barcelona, the city alive with energy and possibilities. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow that enveloped them as they moved forward. Hand in hand, they in the heart of Barcelona, amidst the beauty and chaos. They were not just two individuals searching for love. They were a testament to resilience, to the power of confronting the shadows, and to the hope that bloomed even in the darkest of times. As they strolled along the waterfront, the gentle lapping of the waves against the shore echoed the rhythm of their hearts. Steady, hopeful, and alive. With each step, Mia felt a sense of purpose deepening within her. They were moving towards something beautiful, something worth fighting for. And in that moment, beneath the twilight sky, Mia knew they were not just facing Ely's past. They were building a future together. The days turned into weeks, and as the sun rose and set over Barcelona, the city became a sanctuary for Ely and Mia. With every passing moment, the bond between them grew stronger, nourished by the honesty they had begun to cultivate. They explored the rich tapestry of their surroundings, wandering hand in hand through the narrow cobblestone streets, indulging in the local cuisine, and sharing laughter that echoed off the ancient walls of the city. Yet, beneath the surface of their idyllic days lay a deeper struggle, a reckoning with the past that loomed like a shadow, always present but never fully confronted. Ely's journey to healing had only just begun, and as much as Mia wanted to shield him from pain, she understood that they couldn't ignore the unresolved feelings that lingered. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden hue across the city, Mia found herself standing on the balcony of their temporary apartment. The scent of blooming jasmine filled the air, and she could hear the distant sounds of laughter and music wafting up from the streets below. But her heart was heavy, and a sense of longing tugged at her soul. Ely joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly, his breath warm against her skin. Mia turned in his embrace, meeting his gaze. "About how far we've come and how much there still is to face," she admitted, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "I know things aren't completely resolved between you and Marcus, and I can sense the weight it carries for you." Ely sighed, the tension in his shoulders evident. "I thought I could leave it all behind, but it keeps resurfacing, doesn't it? Every time I think I'm moving forward, it feels like I'm dragged back into that darkness." Mia cupped his face, her thumb brushing over his cheek. "You don't have to go through this alone. I want to help you face it. Whatever it is, we can talk to Marcus again if you think it will help." I know we can't avoid it forever, Ely replied, his eyes searching hers. But there's so much pain tied to that part of my life. I worry that if I open up, I'll lose the progress we've made. Mia took a step back, creating space for Ely to breathe. What if we start small? She suggested, her voice gentle. You don't have to spill everything all at once. Just share what you feel comfortable with. I'm here to listen. Ely considered her words, the flicker of fear mingling with relief in his eyes. Okay, he said, finally, his voice steadying. I'll try. The next day, they decided to visit the beach, a place that had always held a sense of freedom for Ely. The salty breeze tousled their hair as they strolled along the shore, the waves crashing rhythmically against the sand. Mia could see a flicker of joy in Ely's eyes as he watched the children playing in the surf, their laughter mingling with the sounds of the ocean. Do you remember when we first met? Mia asked, her tone playful. You were such a grouch. Ely laughed, the sound light and genuine. I was in a bad place, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. I didn't know how to let anyone in. And now, she pressed, her heart racing as she took a step closer to him. What do you feel now? Ely paused, looking out at the horizon, as if searching for the right words among the waves. Now I feel hopeful, he said finally, turning back to meet her gaze. Hopeful that I can find my way back, not just for myself, but for us. Mia felt her heart swell at his words, the connection between them deepening with each revelation. We can build a life here, Ely, a life filled with love and laughter. You don't have to carry your past alone. He nodded, and for a moment, they stood together, letting the sound of the waves wash over them. But as they resumed their walk, Mia felt a shift in Ely's energy. The weight of his unspoken fears lingered, and she knew they had to confront the shadows that haunted him. Later that evening, they returned to the apartment, where the golden light of the setting sun filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow on the walls. Ely seemed distant, lost in thought as he paced the small living room. Mia could see the turmoil brewing within him, and her heart ached for him. Ely, she said gently, breaking the silence. What's on your mind? He stopped, turning to face her, his expression a mixture of vulnerability and frustration. I just don't want to go back to that place, he admitted, his voice low. I don't want to feel like I did when I lost everything. Mia approached him, her heart racing. You won't lose everything. You're not alone anymore. You have me. Ely shook his head, a shadow crossing his face. It's not that simple. My past is tangled with so many regrets, and every time I try to face it, I feel like I'm drowning. Then let me help you swim, Mia urged, stepping closer, her eyes locked on his. Whatever it is you're afraid of, I'm here to support you. Ely's gaze softened, and he reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. You deserve better than my mess, he whispered, a hint of anguish lacing his voice. I want to share your mess, she replied, her voice steady and resolute. You're not a burden to me. You're the man I care about, and I want to be part of your healing journey. Ely's shoulders dropped, the tension slowly ebbing away. I've kept so much from you, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. I was afraid that if you knew the truth, you'd see me as broken and walk away. Tell me, Mia encouraged, her heart pounding as she prepared herself for whatever Ely was about to reveal. I want to know you completely, even the parts you're afraid to share. He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. After our parents died, Marcus and I were left to fend for ourselves. I felt this immense pressure to be strong for him, but I was just a kid. I didn't know how to navigate the grief. There were nights I didn't sleep, worrying about what would happen to us. Mia listened intently, her heart aching for the young boy Ely had been, the boy who had carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. And then, she prompted gently, things got darker. I started isolating myself, convinced that if I didn't let anyone in, I wouldn't feel the pain as much. I ran away from everything, friends, school, even Marcus, Ely admitted, his voice trembling. I thought I was protecting him, but in reality, I was just running. Tears welled in Mia's eyes as she realized the depth of Ely's struggle. Ely, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. You were just a child. You did what you thought was best, but you're not that kid anymore. You're allowed to heal and to feel. But I hurt Marcus. I abandoned him when he needed me the most, Ely said, anguish etched on his face. I don't know if I can ever make that up to him. By facing the past, you're already taking the first step, Mia reassured him. You're choosing to confront it now instead of running away. That shows strength. Ely looked at her, his expression softening as he absorbed her words. I'm scared, he admitted. Scared that I won't be able to handle it all, that I'll fall apart again. Then let me be your anchor, Mia said, her voice steady and soothing. You don't have to do this alone. I'll be right by your side, every step of the way. With that, Ely nodded slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing just a fraction. Okay, he said, his voice steadying. I want to try? As they settled onto the couch, Mia felt a sense of warmth envelop them. She knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but they were taking the first step together, and that made all the difference. Tell me about Marcus, Mia encouraged gently, her heart open and ready to listen. What's your relationship like? Ely leaned back, the memories flooding his mind. We were once inseparable, he began, his voice softening with nostalgia. We shared everything, secrets, dreams, even our fears. But after our parents died, things changed. I didn't want to feel the weight of our shared grief, so I distanced myself. And how did that make you feel? Mia prompted, sensing the depth of emotion behind his words. Guilty, Ely replied, a deep sadness in his eyes. I felt like I betrayed him, but I thought if I left, he could live a normal life. I didn't realize it would only push him away. Mia nodded, understanding the complexity of their relationship. It's hard to let go of the past, especially when you're trying to protect someone you love, she said gently. Ely sighed, the weight of his past heavy on his shoulders. I just wish I could go back and change things, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But you can't, Mia reminded him, her heart aching for the pain he carried. What you can do is reach out to him now. You can show him that you're ready to reconnect. Ely took a deep breath, the thought lingering in his mind. Do you really think he'll want to hear from me? He asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. Why wouldn't he? Mia countered, her eyes steady. You're still his brother, and deep down, he must be longing for that connection too. It might take time, but reaching out is the first step toward healing. The idea lingered between them like a fragile thread, a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. Ely's heart raced as he contemplated the possibility of reconnecting with Marcus. I need to think about it, he said finally, the weight of the decision heavy on him. Take all the time you need, Mia replied softly, wrapping her arms around him. Just know that I'm here for you, every step of the way. As they settled into a comfortable silence, the city outside buzzed with life, the streets alive with energy. Ely felt a sense of calm wash over him, knowing that he didn't have to navigate this journey alone. Days passed, and with each sunrise, Ely found himself drawn deeper into the magic of Barcelona. The vibrant culture, the passionate people, and the beauty of the city began to heal the scars he had carried for so long. He and Mia continued to explore, diving into the local cuisine, dancing at lively street festivals, and soaking in the history that surrounded them. Yet, even amidst the joy, the weight of his unresolved feelings lingered. Ely found himself torn between the desire to embrace this new chapter and the haunting memories of his past. He knew he had to confront Marcus, but the thought of facing his brother filled him with dread. One night, as they stargazed from the rooftop terrace of their apartment, Mia turned to Ely, sensing his turmoil. What's holding you back? She asked, her voice gentle and understanding. Ely sighed, his heart heavy with uncertainty. It's hard to explain, he admitted, looking up at the twinkling stars. It's not just about Marcus. It's about everything. The fear of rejection, the worry that I'll mess things up again. I don't want to lose him for a second time. Mia reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers as they sat together in silence. You're not the same person you were before, she reassured him. You've grown, and you're learning to face your past. Whatever happens, you'll be okay. I know, Ely replied, his voice steadying. But I can't shake the fear that if I reach out, it'll all fall apart again. Then maybe it's time to take that leap of faith, Mia encouraged, her eyes shining with hope. Trust that you've changed, that this time can be different, and know that I'll be right here, no matter what happens. As they sat together under the stars, Ely felt a flicker of determination ignite within him. The shadows of his past still loomed, but the promise of a brighter future with Mia gave him the courage he needed. The next morning, Ely took a deep breath as he picked up his phone, hesitating for a moment before dialing Marcus's number. The ringing felt like an eternity, and just as he was about to hang up, he heard his brother's familiar voice on the other end. "Ely." Marcus's tone was cautious, laced with surprise. "Hey, it's me," Ely replied, his heart racing. I wanted to talk." "Talk about what?" Marcus asked, his voice steady yet guarded. Ely felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. "About us. I know it's been a while, but I'm ready to face things. I don't want to keep running away." There was a long pause, and Ely held his breath, waiting for Marcus's response. Finally, he spoke, his voice softer now. "I missed you, Ely. I didn't understand why you pulled away. I thought I lost you. I thought I was protecting you," Ely confessed, emotion flooding his voice. "I didn't want you to feel the pain I was carrying, but I was wrong to shut you out. You're my brother, and I want to make things right." Marcus took a deep breath on the other end, the tension palpable. "I'd like that. I'd really like that." Ely felt a rush of relief wash over him, the connection with his brother rekindling after so long. "Can we meet? I want to talk in person." "Of course," Marcus replied, a note of warmth returning to his voice. "How about tomorrow? We can meet at our favorite cafe." Ely smiled, feeling hope bloom within him. "That sounds perfect." As they hung up, he turned to Mia, who had been silently supporting him through the call. Her eyes sparkled with pride and encouragement, and he felt a wave of gratitude for her unwavering presence in his life. "I did it," he said, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Mia beamed, pulling him into a tight embrace. "I knew you could. This is a huge step, Ely. I'm so proud of you." The next day dawned bright and beautiful, the sun shining down on the vibrant streets of Barcelona. Ely felt a whirlwind of emotions as he prepared to meet Marcus, the gravity of their reunion weighing heavily on him. As he arrived at the cafe, his heart raced with anticipation. The familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the sound of laughter and chatter from nearby tables. Ely spotted Marcus seated at their usual spot, his expression a mix of apprehension and hope. "Hey," Ely greeted, his voice barely above a whisper as he approached the table. "Hey," Marcus replied, his eyes searching Ely's face. "It's been a while." "Yeah," Ely admitted, taking a seat across from him. "I'm sorry for everything, for shutting you out. I didn't know how to deal with what happened." Marcus nodded, his gaze softening. "I understand. I was lost too. I just wanted my brother back. I want to be back," Ely said, his heart racing. "I want to be there for you like I should have been all along." Their conversation flowed like a gentle tide, weaving through memories of their childhood, the pain of loss, and the longing for connection. As they spoke, Ely felt the distance between them begin to dissolve, replaced by the familiar bond they had once shared. "I've missed our talks," Marcus said, a hint of nostalgia in his voice. "Remember when we used to dream about traveling the world together?" Ely chuckled, the warmth of their shared memories enveloping him. "Yeah, and I still have that map we made. Let's revisit that dream," Marcus suggested, his eyes sparkling with hope. "We could take a trip together just like old times." Ely felt a rush of excitement at the thought. "I'd love that. I've always wanted to explore together again." As they shared stories and laughter, Ely felt a sense of healing begin to take root. The weight of his past was still there, but he no longer felt alone in carrying it. He had Marcus back in his life, and with Mia by his side, he was ready to embrace the future. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the cafe, Ely looked at Marcus and felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. "Thank you for being patient with me," he said, his voice sincere. "I know I don't deserve it, but I appreciate you giving me another chance." Marcus smiled, the warmth of their bond radiating between them. "We all have our struggles, Ely. What matters is that we're here now, ready to face whatever comes next together. As they left the cafe, Ely felt a sense of lightness in his heart. The shadows of his past no longer loomed as large, and the promise of a brighter future filled him with hope. The following weeks unfolded like a beautiful tapestry, each moment woven together with laughter, love, and the joy of rediscovery. Ely and Marcus rekindled their brotherly bond, exploring the city, sharing meals, and embracing the adventures that awaited them. Mia remained a steadfast presence in Ely's life, her love and support bolstering his journey toward healing. Together, they ventured into the heart of Barcelona, reveling in the vibrancy of life around them. One afternoon, as they strolled through the bustling La Boqueria market, Ely felt a rush of gratitude for the life he was building. The vibrant colors, the sounds of laughter, and the intoxicating aromas surrounded him, and he knew he was exactly where he belonged. "Look at all this," Mia said, her eyes sparkling with excitement as she gestured to a stall overflowing with fresh fruits. "It's like a feast for the senses." Ely smiled, feeling a sense of joy swell within him. "It really is, and I get to share it with you." As they navigated through the market, Mia picked up a ripe strawberry, her eyes glimmering with mischief. "Want to try one?" "Absolutely," Ely replied, grinning as she handed him the fruit. Their fingers brushed against each other, and in that moment, he felt the warmth of their connection solidify. Ely took a bite, the sweetness exploding on his tongue, and he couldn't help but laugh. "This is amazing!" Mia beamed, her laughter ringing like music in the air. "I told you, it's the best part of being here." In that moment, surrounded by the vibrant energy of the market, Ely realized that life was meant to be savored, one moment at a time. The shadows of his past were still there, but they no longer defined him. He was no longer alone, and for the first time in a long while, he felt free. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the city, Ely looked at Mia, gratitude swelling within him. "Thank you for being my light in this journey," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. Mia smiled, her eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. "And thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey. You're stronger than you realize," Ely, with her words echoing in his heart. Ely knew that he was ready to embrace whatever came next, not just for himself, but for the people he loved. He had faced his past, reconnected with his brother, and discovered a love that would guide him through the darkest of times. As they walked hand in hand through the enchanting streets of Barcelona, Ely felt the promise of a new beginning wrapping around him like a warm embrace. The city pulsed with life, and he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them head-on, surrounded by the love and support of those who mattered most. The weeks that followed Ely's heartfelt reunion with Marcus were nothing short of transformative. Each day brought with it new adventures, and with Marcus back in his life, Ely felt the weight of his past begin to lift. The bond between the brothers grew stronger, forged through shared laughter and experiences as they navigated the vibrant streets of Barcelona together. Ely and Mia continued to explore the city hand in hand, their connection deepening with each passing moment. They discovered hidden gems nestled within the bustling neighborhoods, indulged in delectable tapas, and shared whispered secrets under the stars. The beauty of Barcelona served as the perfect backdrop for their blossoming love. One sunny afternoon, as they lounged in Parc de la Ciutadella, surrounded by the laughter of children and the gentle rustling of leaves, Ely turned to Mia, his heart brimming with emotions. "I never thought I could feel this way again," he admitted, his voice tinged with vulnerability. "You've brought light back into my life, and I don't want to take it for granted." Mia's eyes sparkled with warmth as she reached for his hand. "You deserve every bit of happiness, Ely. We all have our scars, but it's how we choose to move forward that truly matters." Her words resonated deeply within him, and in that moment, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for her unwavering support. "I want to build a future with you," he said, his voice steady. "I want to share my life with you, wherever it may lead." Mia's cheeks flushed with warmth, and a radiant smile illuminated her face. "I feel the same way, Ely. You've taught me the importance of connection and healing." I can't imagine my life without you now. As they sat together in the park, the sun casting a golden glow over their entwined fingers, Ely realized that he was ready to embrace this new beginning. He wanted to fully commit to Mia and explore the depths of their love, and he felt a sense of clarity wash over him. With the promise of a brighter future ahead, Ely and Mia decided to take a trip together to the stunning coastal town of Sitges, just a short train ride from Barcelona. Known for its beautiful beaches and charming streets, it was the perfect getaway for the couple to celebrate their love and newfound freedom. As they strolled hand in hand along the sandy shores, Ely marveled at the beauty surrounding them. The sound of waves crashing against the shore blended seamlessly with the laughter of families and the chatter of fellow travelers, creating a symphony of life that filled him with joy. "Mia, I have something I want to share with you," Ely said, his heart racing with anticipation. Mia turned to him, her eyes curious. "What is it?" Taking a deep breath, he felt the weight of the moment. "I've been thinking a lot about my future. I want to pursue my passion for photography more seriously, and I want you by my side as I do it. I want to capture our adventures together and create memories that will last a lifetime." Mia's expression softened, and she nodded slowly. "I would love that, Ely. Your passion for photography is incredible, and I can't wait to be a part of it. You have a way of capturing moments that truly brings them to life." Encouraged by her response, Ely felt a surge of excitement. "I've even thought about starting a travel blog, showcasing our adventures and the beauty of the places we explore. We could inspire others to see the world and embrace life fully." "I love that idea," Mia exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "We could document our journeys, share stories, and connect with people from all over the globe. It sounds amazing." As they continued walking along the beach, Ely's heart swelled with happiness. The thought of building a life with Mia, filled with creativity, adventure, and love, fueled his determination. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting hues of pink and orange across the sky, Ely knew it was the perfect time to take another step forward. He turned to Mia, his heart racing with purpose. "Mia, I have one more thing to ask you." "What is it?" she replied, her curiosity piqued. Ely took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "I want to know if you would consider taking this leap with me, not just in our adventures, but in life. Will you be my partner, not just for now, but for all the tomorrows to come?" Mia's breath hitched, and her eyes glistened with emotion. "Are you asking me to be with you forever?" she whispered, a smile spreading across her face. "Yes," Ely replied, his voice steady and sincere. "I want you by my side as we navigate life together, creating memories and building a future filled with love." Tears of joy welled in Mia's eyes as she nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, yes, I will. I can't imagine my life without you, Ely. You filled my heart with so much joy and hope." With their hearts intertwined, they embraced under the setting sun, the world around them fading away as they reveled in the magic of their love. Ely knew that this was just the beginning of their journey together. As Ely and Mia returned to Barcelona, they felt invigorated by their trip to Sitges and their commitment to each other. Ely was also eager to deepen his connection with Marcus, wanting to ensure that their newfound bond would flourish. One afternoon, they gathered at their favorite cafe, where the air was filled with the aroma of fresh pastries and brewed coffee. Marcus arrived, a bright smile lighting up his face. "Hey, brothers," he greeted, wrapping Ely in a warm hug. "What's new?" Ely exchanged a knowing glance with Mia before sharing their recent trip and the exciting plans they had discussed. "Mia and I are starting a travel blog together, and we're really excited about it." Marcus's eyes widened in surprise. "That's incredible. You've always had a talent for capturing moments, Ely. I can't wait to see what you create." Ely felt a rush of gratitude at Marcus's support. "Thanks, man. It means a lot to me." As they continued their conversation, Ely decided it was time to express what had been weighing on his heart. "Marcus, I want to thank you for being there for me. I know I shut you out for a long time, and I want to make things right between us." Marcus leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "It's okay, Ely. We all have our struggles. What matters is that we're here now, and we have a chance to move forward together." Ely nodded, the bond between them feeling stronger than ever. I want to be there for you too. You're my brother, and I've missed having you in my life. I've missed you too, Marcus replied, a smile breaking through his seriousness. Let's make a pact. No more shutting each other out. Let's be there for one another. As they raised their coffee cups in agreement, Ely felt a sense of relief wash over him. The connection with Marcus was mending, and the love between them as brothers was rekindling. Days turned into weeks, and life in Barcelona continued to flourish for Ely, Mia, and Marcus. They spent their days exploring the city, sharing stories, and planning their future together. Ely dove headfirst into photography, capturing the essence of the city, its vibrant culture, and the love he shared with Mia. One beautiful evening, as they strolled through the streets adorned with twinkling lights, Ely stopped at a picturesque spot overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking, the skyline glowing under the twilight sky. Mia, he said, his heart pounding with excitement. I want to create something special for our blog. Mia's eyes widened in curiosity. What do you have in mind? I want to photograph you in this beautiful light to capture the essence of our love right here, he replied, his voice laced with emotion. Mia's face lit up with joy as she nodded. I would love that. I can't wait to see what you create. As Ely snapped photos, capturing Mia's laughter and the tenderness between them, he felt a wave of happiness wash over him. The love they shared was evident in every frame, and he knew he wanted to document it for the world to see. With each click of the camera, Ely felt as if he was capturing not just images but memories, moments that would last a lifetime. When he reviewed the photos, he couldn't help but smile, knowing that he was sharing a piece of their journey with others. As spring bloomed in Barcelona, Ely felt a sense of urgency within him. He knew he wanted to take their relationship to the next level. One night, as they stargazed on the rooftop terrace of their apartment, Ely turned to Mia, his heart racing. Mia, he began, his voice filled with emotion. I want to share my life with you in every way possible. You've changed me for the better, and I can't imagine my future without you. Mia looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise and anticipation. What are you saying, Ely? Ely took a deep breath, pulling out a small velvet box from his pocket. I want to ask you to be my wife. Mia gasped, her hand covering her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Are you serious? Yes, Ely replied, his heart pounding. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. You are my everything, and I promise to love you fiercely, to support you, and to cherish every moment we share. With shaking hands, Ely opened the box to reveal a delicate ring that sparkled in the moonlight. Mia, will you marry me? In that instant, the world around them faded, leaving only the two of them. Mia's voice trembled with emotion as she nodded vigorously. Yes, yes, of course. I will marry you. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Ely felt an overwhelming sense of joy wash over him. They embraced tightly, lost in the moment of pure happiness, knowing that they were embarking on a beautiful journey together. The months flew by as Ely and Mia dove into wedding planning, their hearts filled with excitement. They chose a beautiful venue in Barcelona, surrounded by blooming flowers and breathtaking views of the city they both loved. Friends and family from near and far came together to celebrate their love, creating an atmosphere filled with joy and warmth. On the day of the wedding, the sun shone brightly, illuminating the vibrant colors of the decorations. Ely stood at the altar, his heart racing with anticipation as he awaited Mia's arrival. The sound of soft music floated through the air, and the guests turned to see Mia walking down the aisle, radiant in her elegant white dress. Ely's breath caught in his throat as he took in her beauty. She was a vision, her smile lighting up the entire venue. As she approached him, Ely felt a sense of completeness wash over him. Their vows were filled with emotion, promises of love and devotion that echoed through the hearts of everyone present. Ely felt tears of joy welling up in his eyes as he spoke, his words flowing from a place of deep love and commitment. I vow to stand by your side, to lift you up in times of joy and in times of sorrow, he declared, his voice steady. You are my heart, my partner, and my home." Mia's voice trembled with emotion as she replied, "I promise to love you fiercely, to support you in all your dreams, and to build a life filled with happiness and adventure together." As they exchanged rings, the crowd erupted into applause, celebrating the union of two souls destined to be together. As they shared their first kiss as a married couple, Ely felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Their love story was a testament to resilience, healing, and the beauty of new beginnings. In the months that followed, Ely and Mia embraced their new life together. They traveled to stunning locations, documenting their adventures through their travel blog. Each post was infused with their love story, inspiring others to pursue their passions and cherish the moments that life offered. Back in Barcelona, they found a cozy apartment filled with light and warmth, a space that became a reflection of their love. They decorated it with memories captured through Ely's lens, photos from their travels, candid moments, and the adventures that shaped their relationship. As they settled into their new routine, they faced challenges together, navigating their careers, building a family, and supporting each other through life's ups and downs. Their bond deepened with each experience, solidifying the foundation of their relationship. Years later, as they stood on the rooftop of their apartment, overlooking the sprawling city of Barcelona, Ely wrapped his arms around Mia. "I can't believe how far we've come," he said, his voice filled with awe. Mia leaned against him, her heart swelling with love. "We've built a beautiful life together, Ely. Thank you for being my partner in this journey." Ely kissed her forehead, feeling grateful for every moment they had shared. Here's to many more adventures and memories together. As the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant hues, Ely and Mia knew that they had found their happily ever after. Together, they embraced the future, their hearts entwined, ready to face whatever life had in store for them, forever united in love. Hope you enjoyed this story. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to our channel. Your participation is essential so that we can continue to bring you more incredible stories. Share it with your friends to help our channel grow. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.